D to Real Life Solutions. I'm going to talk about my experience dealing with immigration related issues. This particular live today, I'm not going to be on too long today because I am really busy. Got a lot of different things going on, but I want to have the opportunity to take maybe a 20 to 35 minute, you know, live stream to kind of talk about my experiences that have happened pretty sporadically when dealing with immigration related issues. And so I have went about in the last few weeks and days in which I talked about immigration related issues, and I talked about my experience dealing with it from a professional standpoint. I've never dealt with this on a personal level. I've never had anyone personally that I knew or was associated with on a personal level, meaning friends, family, things of that sort. Um, I have dealt with some immigration related issues professionally with some workers that I've had. Um, they were all legally here, but they had some personal things going on. Um, just for example, one of the first issues I dealt with that dealt with immigration was that I had an employee of mine um, in the first year of the Trump administration talked about um, that she had family members who were being deported and who were um, you know, here illegally, and they were working. They were doing a lot of different things. So that's kind of what occurred. That was my first kind of where it hit head on. Usually, when I dealt with situations, the situation dealt with a client who was through some government agency, had a husband. Usually, it was a situation where they had a husband or other family members that were out here illegally. Some were legal, some were not, and they were attempting to move back or bring them here, go through all this legal stuff, um, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the usual situation. There were all types of family court related issues. There would be some potential criminal related situations. I had one situation a few years ago where I had a client. This was family therapy, and it was through a social service agency, and the the mother affiliated herself with someone that was involved in organized crime, and they had a daughter whom he couldn't see because of the type of work that he was involved in and things that he was doing. And so he was in a foreign country, a Latin country, and he wanted to be able to see his daughter. And there were all types of arrangements they were trying to make, all different types of things, was issues about her seeing her father because of the danger that was involved. So again, as I talk about my experience dealing with immigration, illegal immigration, it varied. Okay, it varied to base. This was not something that I consistently dealt with on a daily basis. Not it was not. It was something that this is something that I would deal with probably. I would say maybe 5 to 8 times a year, less than 10, definitely, but about five, maybe somewhere between 5 to 8 times a year. I would have these special cases. I would have these situations where people had these unique circumstances, and we would discuss how to cope and deal with these things mentally. And they sought counseling due to this identifiable stressor that was affecting their life. Okay. And, that's pretty much my experience, but I'm going to go more into specifics. So shout out to Bumblebee Stinger and shout out to Must Be Trini Gal State. Appreciate you all for coming in today as I continue to kind of talk about the immigration issue. Okay. Now, again, as I talk about my experience, we have to understand that in my line of work, being mental health, the immigration issue consists of a variety of things. It's not just limited to a person being here illegally or whatever circumstances. It deals with the influence of how you're dealing with healthcare related issues. You're dealing with insurance related issues. You're dealing with social services and having the access to public resources. We're talking about, I think I mentioned education. We're also talking about legal aspects of it, okay? And then also, we're talking about the financial cost, okay? All of these things in which, if there is some discrepancy or some issues with someone functioning, and it deals with someone's livelihood, particularly if you have multiple people that are connected to all of the domains that I just listed, it causes problems. It can cause stressors. It can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. Okay, it can cause anger related issues. It can affect people in multiple emotional ways. Okay, because regardless of the reason they're here, they are here. And they have to deal with the outcomes of whether or not they came here the proper way, through the proper process, or if they came here through whatever process that they chose. And as a therapist, I can't get into my own personal view of the Constitution. I can't get in my own personal view of the law. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to talk to a client and tell them, you shouldn't have came here legally. I shouldn't come or your parents shouldn't have came here legally. I can't address those things. But what I can address with that client is how those decisions are affecting you and how we can problem solve using cognitive strategies on rectifying the situation. What can we do to solve it? How can you be in the right mental space? How can you function to continue going to school, to continue working, to continue maintaining relationships? Okay, that's the aspect of it that I deal with. I'm not going to get into the police department and ICE and you shouldn't come to this country. Where's your birth certificate? Do you have your proper documents? Although in the intake process of receiving services, if you don't have the proper information, I will not provide services, and I will probably refer one to another agency that's probably state sponsored, a nonprofit, maybe a religious institution that provides some level of therapy, or they have the resources to link them to therapy. But if you don't have the proper information, I can't see you. Okay, particularly if you are utilizing a public health care. Cash is a different thing. Cash is the only, even with the usage of cash. Okay, even with the usage of cash, I need to identify who you are. I do not see any client unless, particularly an adult, 18 years of older, you need to have an ID. Okay, you need to have an ID, minimum. If you're using an insurance, I need to see your ID, and I also need to see your insurance. That's minimal. How you doing, Miss Veronica? Appreciate you for being here. So you have to have a minimum of that. Now, for someone that's paying cash, which 99% of my clients don't pay cash, Um, for cash, I still need to see an ID or something identifying yourself. And then I have to have something that is identifying who you are. Okay. If you can't show me something that in a clinical space of identifying who you are, I am going to refuse to treat you. I am basically going to refer you to others who may go about doing things a certain way where they don't need to, you don't have to go through that process. But minimum, I need to see your ID, driver's license, ID, passport, or what have you that identifies who you are, okay, and your insurance if you're using private insurance, public insurance, or some other agency that's going to pay for those services for you, okay? Um, in say for instance, if you have like employment assistance or something, you should have a code or something with a company. I have to have some things that verify that. I'm just not randomly accepting people with no identification, no anything, and just opening up myself to just providing services to any and everybody. Doesn't work like that. There is an intake process. Some intake, particularly on the facility or private practice, some are longer than other ones. Particularly, my intake to receive outpatient services in my practice is just a few pages long. My intake, if someone wanted to go to a day program that I have, particularly an intensive outpatient program or other services in which I'm providing food, I'm providing transportation, that paperwork is about maybe 10, 12 pages. At minimum for me, you're gonna fill out a face sheet. You're gonna fill out a consent form. You're gonna fill out paperwork, a disclosure form, whether or not you're gonna give me the ability to give out information to whatever said agencies you're associated with if they request information about you, or my ability to get information from others. You give me consent, written consent to do so. Okay. Also, I may give you information as it relates to your client's rights, things of that sort. The right to complaint, to file a complaint, the right to know your rights as a client. Okay, those are the things that you may sign and have an understanding of. Okay, um, particularly for people who are not born in this country that are immigrants. I had a situation where I did, and I need to maybe update that. I may have it written in English and have it written in Spanish. Again, I at one point I had interpreters. I had several interpreters that worked for my company. At the moment, right now, I don't have. This is probably the first time in a long time that I don't have a Spanish interpreter that works for me in some capacity. But that's going to change. That I never go that long, but as of right now, I want to say, particularly in the last 8 years, I've always had a Spanish interpreter. Okay, so as I deal with immigration, these clients come here with these issues, and I've said this in the other videos. Many of these issues dealing with immigration, um, they're not necessarily the client. In most of those situations, not the client who's risking at being deported. It's usually family members or someone that they married or someone they're engaged to, or something of that. It's usually other parties that they're trying to assist, and it's affecting them because they don't want to lose, that relationship, or they don't want that person to leave the country. Um, I've had situations, and I'm not relegating this just to Latin countries. I've had people who had work visas here who had issues renewing those visas and things like that. That only happened a couple of times. I had a person who I had a European American that was here that was trying to get that situated so that they can continue to work here and be here longer. I also had another person that was of Asian descent that had a similar situation. And in both of those situations, they were able to get things taken care of so they can stay and continue to be here. Okay. Um, and there was a lot of anxiety that sprung from that particular client, our clients, not knowing or being unsure or being just being just being unsure about their longevity in this country. Okay. And it's not very easy to treat someone who is unsure whether or not they're going to be here today or gone tomorrow, because there's the hypervigilance towards anybody that they don't know, the near knocking on their door when they really don't have, just unsure who's going to come at the door. Someone's going to call them, and there's going to be a knock at night, or if they're at work and someone's attempting, because that's what ICE is doing now in California. They're literally going to factories, they're going to jobs, they're going to schools, they're going to all different types of places where people who they deem as being illegal are situated. They're going to the Home Depots, in the parking lot. They're going to all of these different places, and they are snatching up people, asking these people who they think. But to be honest with you, there is an aspect of racial profiling that's going on in this that's not talked about enough, because the way this is illustrated in the media is if it's only Latin countries, particularly Mexico. Okay. And I know for a fact, and I know that there are immigrants that are not here legally from other non-Hispanic, Spanish-speaking countries or Hispanic countries. There are a lot of people here that are not here legally from the continent, from Africa, from the motherland. And in Houston, we have a large Nigerian population. We have a large African population. There's probably, I want to say, maybe 200,000, at least 200,000 indigenous Africans that live in the city of Houston. At least 250,000. That's a lot of people. I'm going to say, even though most Africans are here legally because of the stringent process that they make melanated people go through, particularly with make sure you got all your shots, certain education, because a lot of African immigrants come here to go to school. They're highly educated. They speak multiple languages. They make sure you are here proper. You're here in the manner that is legal. And you got to look at the proximity that hinders your ability to come here legally. Your chances, because you have to fly here or you come through ships or whatever it means, but the distance makes it harder than someone who can just walk over a country line of sovereignty. So a sovereign country's borders, okay? So, but nevertheless, there are Africans who are here who change their names, who are, doing all types of things in a illegal in an illegal way. They're getting married, and then they're married in their homeland. They change their name several times. They move around and all these different things to remain here. That is a thing. But I want us to understand there are also a lot of Eastern Europeans who are in this country illegally. There are a lot of Eastern Europeans who are here from the Ukraine, who are here from Estonia and Georgia and Slovakia, the Czech Republic, places of that sort. They're not all here legally. Now, because of their whiteness, they're probably not going to be targeted. but there are a lot of people who are illegal from those countries. I've dealt with some immigration related issues. I had one guy about 2 years ago who was married to an American woman, has children, doing very well for himself. But he came here legally. He was here for about 10 years, and he has a corporate job. Even though he was a very intelligent guy. Had an accent, had a strong accent, but he did well for himself. And he dealt with some immigration related issues as it relates to not himself, but others who were related to him that wanted to, get a piece of the American pie and enjoy the success that he has because he was highly successful. He made six figures plus, and he did well, very, very well for himself. He worked his butt off. He did well for himself, and I saw him for almost 2 years. He started off individual, then we had marital therapy for him and his wife. But he did very well for himself. He had some immigration issues. He was also affected by some government issues. That's one reason why he chose not to go home, and issues related to military issues in other countries that affected him. That was one of the reasons why he left the country he was from, just on the whole sheer factor of safety. So I deal a lot with cultural assimilation. There are people who have issues assimilating to American culture. There are people who hold strong to their country of origin, as far as their norms, their customs, as far as just the culture itself, which I can understand that. I mean, if I was to move to another country, I'm not going to stop thinking and acting like a Black American. Now, I am going to, understand that there's going to be some assimilation issues. I'm going to have to start learning some language outside of English and being competent in speaking. But, I do understand that I can't go into this country thinking I'm going to get away with certain things that I would get away in America, or I could do certain things, or I can function in certain ways that are not seen as appropriate in that country. The problem with the immigrants that come to the United States is that these immigrants that come here legally, illegally, think because of our freedom of choice, freedom of speech, they want the citizens of this country to assimilate to them, when in all actuality it doesn't work like that in other countries. You have to assimilate to that culture you're moving to. This is the only country in the world where Americans are expected. It's not about, it's beyond just showing support and being open, but you in some form, you have to go out your way to be openly accepting and even patronize, or even I would say cater to the culture of others. That's why we have, positions that people this is a Spanish speaking position. You have to learn Spanish to in order to work this job. Early in my career, particularly moving in the state of Texas, there were several positions that I didn't get before I went into business for myself because I was not a Spanish speaking person. Now, I'm not going to get into the fairness of that, but I'm going to say that was a professional reality. That was a professional reality. Okay, that was if I didn't speak Spanish, they're not going to hire you. They're not going to hire. They're going to hire a bilingual person. Bilingual just doesn't mean you speak. Bilingual means you speaking more than one language. Meaning you're speaking more than one language. It doesn't mean you only speak English. It just means that you can speak Spanish and German. That's bilingual. In America, it means you're speaking English and another language. So many times we tend to Label bilingual, we automatically thinking you speaking Spanish and English. That doesn't mean you're bilingual. There are plenty of people who are here that may speak multiple language, but they don't speak they don't speak English well. They don't speak Spanish at all. Okay, there are tons of people from other countries that speak their tribal languages, regional languages, and then an official state language, and then they speak English also. Okay. English is a communication currency. It's a major currency globally. Learning because of the the economic and political status of European countries, which Spain is a European country. Europe, in Europe, you got England, that is a European country. The United States is a country that is ruled by descendants of Europeans. Um, Canada. Because of that, English is seen as, and also Australia, English is seen as a currency, major communicative currency to do business or to do other different, whatever major things that you have as goals and you're trying to do it at a high level, you're going to come across people who are English speaking. Spanish, the same thing. German, yeah, speaking German is also the same, and also French, particularly in African countries. French is a global language. Okay, so those are just facts, and all of that is basically remnants of colonialism, European imperialism, and colonialism. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about my experience dealing with immigration because I have dealt with immigration from a professional standpoint with clients who not necessarily directly the client themselves, but having to deal with this for their mom, their grandmother, their father. Oops, I'm sorry. Someone that they are affiliated with, someone that they have a relationship with, and this affects them. Okay. And so in therapy, I'm helping these clients cope with this on a daily basis. And it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. So guys, I just wanted to have that discussion with you. Just wanted to have a short talk with you all about that. I didn't want to do a long live vertical today. I plan to maybe do one more vertical later on today, or I may do some uploads. I'm definitely going to do another vertical tomorrow. Okay. And I'm going to talk about issues of immigration again. And I'm going to start talking about my uploads will consist of other counseling related topics. So guys, once again, I want to thank you all for being here. This is D. Durrell with D. Durrell Life Solutions. I hope you all have a great day.